you have a favorite book of all time? One that you would read repeatedly, bring with you wherever you go, and recommend to anyone who would care to listen? For me, the answer is easy. It's this one, Philosophy of the Art of Living by Wilhelm Schmid, in which the author is kind of trying to re-establish the art of living in all its aspects as a philosophical discipline, both in academia as well as public discourse. The only problem with it is the book has never been translated into English. It's also quite a dense book, in what we should see the best possible senses of the word. So it's not at all straightforward to make a short, animated explainer video about it. In fact, I did the math, and if I wanted to give every aspect of the book justice, it would take me around 80 videos of this size to cover it completely. So I thought the best way to show what makes the book so special to me, and within this more pragmatic niche of philosophy in general, would be to compare it to another book, for which I have chosen Ryan Holiday's book, Stillness is Key, specifically the chapter Conquer Your Anger, because it matches quite well, both in size and content, to Wilhelm Schmid's chapter, Techniques of Dealing with Affects, the Art of Anger. In that both are kind of trying to tackle the balance between channeling anger and using it for motivation, or if it should rather be prevented and avoided altogether. So to set the baseline, let's start with Ryan Holiday. So he decides to start his chapter about anger with an extended anecdote about Michael Jordan, who was kind of known for channeling grievances in his sport to motivate himself. So Holiday describes how Michael Jordan in his Hall of Fame speech, in trying to emphasize this element of his psychology, it kind of backfires in that he spends a lot of time talking about petty grievances rather than thanking the people who have contributed to his success. So I actually think starting with Michael Jordan is really a strong example. The only problem with it is that he inevitably spends a lot of time setting up this one example. Like, there's so many what I would consider unnecessary details here. Setting up characters like Dean Smith, Leroy Smith, Pat Riley, Jerry Krause, how tall these people are, what teams they have played for, how many MVPs they have won. Like, we are 4 pages into this 5.5-page chapter when he finally starts to provide some stoic perspectives about the issue that he has kind of built his brand around. Like, look, Ryan Holiday is obviously a successful author, and he has found his audience with this type of writing. But at the end of the day, what I would ask myself is this really the best way to provide guidance to your audience about the issue at hand? Conquer your anger? Do you really need this long-winded example of the shiny, successful person to provide additional insight on the issue? So many books that are written like that, it's so annoying. But okay, more about that later. For now, let's move over and look at how Wilhelm Schmid introduces the topic. He actually also starts with a short example, but it's a very short one, so pay attention or you will miss it. Okay, sentence 1, my own translation by the way. That there is such a thing as anger in people has disturbed the various cultures throughout time. And they have tried to find different answers to it. Okay, so nothing special yet. He's just kind of setting up that anger is often perceived as a problem and that there are different ways to approach it. Okay, sentence 2. And let's pay attention for the example, right? We might miss it otherwise. One of these answers is, for example, the art form of ancient tragedy, which stages the most extreme outbursts of anger in order to derive insights from them, to make an art form out of the emotion, that is to incorporate it into forms that are no longer ruinous. Man, I fucking love this book, like, what the fuck. Okay, so like, why is this good, you know? What's going on here? You know, it's not that it's more highbrow of an example. He could have written it pretty much just as well if he had used Michael Jordan at the start of the chapter, you know? That's not it. But why I think the sentence is great is that it very succinctly fulfills multiple roles at once within the chapter. It drops you straight into the core mission by providing this thought-provoking example for one way to deal with anger, right? Like, reading this, I could already imagine myself putting the book down for a second and reflecting about the implications of just the second sentence, right? And this is something that I will be able to say for many, many short sections of this book. It's also something that can linger in your memory, right? If you read further, thinking back to this example, it might provide an additional angle to another issue that you might discuss. But okay, let's keep going sentence by sentence for a little more. So the third sentence is again a bit more introductory or transitional. He basically creates anticipation and specifies the focus of his chapter a bit more, saying that philosophers have thought a lot about this and they have a lot of good stuff to say about it. And with the next sentence then we have fully arrived at the chapter proper, when he starts presenting Aristotle's perspective on anger, saying according to Schmid that the person capable of anger in principle deserves respect, insofar that it's the zeal of the soul towards new and greater efforts, while at the same time still granting that it's indispensable to make an intelligent calculation of at whom, for what, and for how long one should be angry. So the next sentence then kind of nicely ties this into Aristotle's ethics of moderation in general. And then we actually get to the biggest area of direct overlap between the two chapters. Because after having spent time with the pro-anger side, so to say, they both go on to present Seneca's view, who quite vigorously condemned the idea of giving into anger in any way. Basically because of the stupefying effect that the emotion has if given into. So this is the section where I actually think both authors do a good job. You know, I never said Ryan Holiday was a bad writer per se. And when I used to read his books, I would often just skip the examples and get straight halfway through to this type of section. Because I think he's generally quite good at writing those short, insightful sections if he wants to. Like, my point of criticism with this and many similar books is that these short sections of value are often embedded in a wall of text that, far from providing as much value as it could, make you search for the insights, like a needle in the haystack. Because after this short section on Seneca, we're already more than 2/3 through to the end of the chapter. So it gives him a little bit more time to add a Buddhistic perspective as well, tie it up with a Michael Jordan example, and then that's all he wrote about this topic, right? So then how does my favorite book of all time continue? And keep in mind, it has also now already provided 2 philosophical perspectives, and we're literally still on page fucking 1. He didn't give a fuck, you know? As he writes in the foreword, he really believed in this concept of establishing the art of living in philosophy. So he just puts his best foot forward and doesn't let go of the gas pedal at any time. That's how this book reads, because it gets even better. So in the next 1.5 pages, he has time for 3 more similarly written perspectives on other philosophers and how those perspectives tie into each other. And now, if you approach this book and want to learn about anger, you have already gotten a lot out of it, right? But how does he keep going? Well, now he goes into the different methods and practices that have been suggested. Like, I have listed a lot of them here. I won't have time, obviously, to go into every single one of them. They're often written in a similar, concise way as the philosophy perspectives I have presented so far. It's just so good, like. If you're a writer and watching this, like, please try to write a bit more like that. And again, he doesn't use any examples because it's not necessary on this topic, right? If I read this chapter about anger, then I have examples about anger in my memory, right? So it's not that hard to relate my memory example to this text. I don't need any extra time and space wasted for an example that relates less to me than my own life does, you know? And if I don't struggle with anger, then I probably won't read the chapter to begin with, right? So yeah, let's look at this example, right? Like the division of anger. He has a little specification, you know? the preliminary stage of anger, the first signs, then the stage of the sudden flare-up. So it is specific enough to think about it, but it's just like the perfect economy of words, because it allows him to provide so much more value within the space and time of the reader that is given to him. To have a massive amount of topics and still cover them in a good amount of detail. So like you can just bring it with you and pretty much have something on almost any aspect of life. But I guess I can stop looking at this now, because we have already achieved a knockout victory in the comparison of these two books. Well, I guess I could see someone say, oh, this is not really a fair comparison, because both books are kind of targeted towards a different market. And yeah, to an extent, that's definitely right. Like, obviously, it's not a fair comparison if I were to look at them in terms of systematic works of philosophy, right? Ryan Holiday is deliberately trying not to be classified in such a way. So in that sense, it's correct. But I guess my point here is that even if you compare them on the level of a self-help literature, it's still so much better. It's hard to write in accordance with Nietzsche's saying, to not write how you think, but how the reader will think. So I think rather than hating on all the books that do that wrong, we should just appreciate a book like this that at every step of the way just fucking nails it, you know? Okay, so as I mentioned at the start, this book was never translated into English, only Italian and Chinese, I think. So if this video made you curious, you can't just go out and pick it up. There are two books of Schmid's that have been translated into English, though it's not one of his, what I would consider, major book, but it's definitely worth checking out if the titles or topics appeal to you. So before we hopefully get an English translation of the book, the best alternative is probably something like Pierre Hadot's Philosophy as a Way of Life. I think he has a similar way of writing that is both in touch with academia and helping with the daily concerns of its readers. With that, thanks for watching. Thanks to the author for believing in his project, for putting everything he has into this book. And again, if you're a writer, please write like that, okay? Of course there's more in it. Of course there is. There's still the perspective outside in that he relates all the techniques that he has written to how you would act if someone else is angry and if you could still apply them via the medium of communication. But I think the point is made.